Good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this video. I wanted to make a video today to talk about, um, yeah, and you can see I'm still learning how to use this camera here, and it's a new camera. And by the way, I think I mentioned I really like this poster right here. So anyway, today I wanted to talk to you about, is the haunt season 2025 going to be up or down? Because some people asked me to make a video on that, so I thought I would, because it's a great question. Um, and the quick answer is, I think it's going to be down. I think it's going to be, way down, actually. But you never know. You never know. So that's why you play the game and you see what happens. But the truth of the matter is, all the tea leaves are there, and so we're going to talk about what you could do about it, why possibly the season's going to be down. Um, Transworld was down, and so let's just start the whole conversation off talking about Transworld for a second. There's a lot of reasons why sales at Transworld was down. Because now I've talked to quite a few vendors, and the reality is that Transworld was down. It was way down. So some of the reasons why that have been tossed out there was because of we're not seeing a lot of new products. We're seeing the same thing again and again and again. By the way, I would agree with that. Okay, I absolutely would agree with that. Um, but um, there's a lot of vendors, for example, that go to Transworld that sell to not just Halloween vendors, but like amusement attractions and stuff like that. And I've talked to a few of these people, and they say they're down. They're down. They're down big league. Okay, Six Flags announced that they're cutting spending in 2026 on new rides. I think it was $100 million, and they say it's due to a decrease in spending. 10% is what I think they said. Their revenues down about 10%, so they're decreasing spending by $100 million. That's a lot of rides that they're not buying. Now, a cool hyper coaster costs, 20, 30, $35 million. So, you could say that's three hyper coasters. These other rides that they buy, they could be like 3 million, 4 million, $5 million range. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's quite a few rides. So, I talked to somebody who's down in Branson. Branson, Missouri is a big tourist town. It's very similar to Gatlinburg. It's very similar to, like, a Myrtle Beach, although Myrtle Beach has an ocean. Silver Dollar City, Branson area has a theme park. It has like a lot of touristy stuff, and it has a big old lake. I was told that business there is down up to 25%. Okay. Tourism, people spending money on attractions. Six Flags is admitting that they're down. I've talked to vendors who sell to amusement attractions, museums, and so on and so forth, and they're down. Um, I look at the St. Louis Cardinals because I'm from St. Louis. Their attendance is way down. Okay, way down from the year before. But regardless, I talked to somebody who works there. They told me that the ancillary spending, so forget how many people stopped going to Cardinal games, but that when they do go, they're spending less money per person than they did last year. So what does all this mean? Okay. Um, I think that, during COVID, people went a little crazy buying things. They went crazy. I mean, the haunted house industry went crazy. Um, pretty much everybody went crazy buying, buying, buying. People were buying pools, new cars, luxury items, boats, second homes. Um, I mean, they literally renovating kitchens, bathrooms, like, adding additions. I mean, everything under the sun, people were spending money on. And what the difference is between then and now is a lot of that spending, mostly by, I hate to say this, by the Joe Biden administration. They just kept spending to keep the economic numbers good. The government was just spending more money than they were making. They were printing more money than they should. Um, Basically, you had an insane amount of inflation, and in order to combat the inflation and the spending, they raise interest rates. Okay, interest rates are really high right now, and Jerome Powell refused and keeps refusing to lower them. Now we hear that he's going to lower them in September, which is good news for the haunted house industry. Okay, because you see what a lot of people don't understand is the problem with spending is people borrow money. They borrow money to put a pool in. They borrow money to buy a boat. They borrow money to buy a new home. They borrow money to do an addition onto their house, or to get a new car or whatever. So when interest rates are really, really high, people don't want to borrow. The other problem is, or let's say you want to expand your business, you borrow. Well, people aren't borrowing a lot right now because, again, the interest rates are really high. The interest rates need to come down. The fear, I guess, is that if you lower interest rates, it might cause inflation, more inflation. So I'm not an economist. I don't know. I just know the basics, okay? Just the basics. And what I do know is that we need probably to take the risk and drop interest rates, even if that causes more inflation. Because right now, people are not borrowing, they're not spending on big ticket items. Now, I want you to understand this. So, if somebody is going to put in a new garage, okay, they borrow, and when they hire someone to put in that garage, so those people make money. Okay, not only do they make money, like the workers, okay, but also, you know who else makes money? The people who supply the lumber, the materials, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like Reaganomics. They used to talk about trickle down. If somebody who's rich, for example, is going to build a $50 million house, most of us would say this is completely absurd that one person can build a $50 million house. Well, remember that they pay obscene amounts of property tax for that house, but they also hire blue collar workers to build that house. Okay. And those workers buy materials. Okay. So you need, that's called trickle down, So even if someone who's rich buys something, like let's say they buy a really expensive yacht, somebody has to build that yacht, right? It's not a bunch of billionaires building yachts. Okay. There might be a billionaire that owns a company that builds yachts, but they don't build the yachts themselves. Does this make sense? So, with that being said, my point is that that's what trickle down economics is. If the people at the top spend more money, it trickles down all the way to the bottom. But right now, people aren't spending a lot of money because they're not borrowing a lot of money. The other thing is you have a lot of people who've invested heavily in the stock market, and they're just leaving it in the market. So they're not pulling it out and spending it. So again, I'm not an economist. This is just the basics of what I understand. So we just saw McDonald's announce yesterday that they are dropping the pricing for all of their food items. Okay, they want to get back to being more affordable. One of the things that COVID did to the economy, which is long-term bad, was drive up wages to levels that drove up everything else. So when people think like, oh, wait a minute, I used to make X and now I make this, you're not really getting ahead, because apartments, like, have gone up to $2,000, $2,500 a month. I mean, it's crazy. Okay. No one's getting ahead because of wages going up. Everything goes up with it. So nobody gets anywhere further ahead than they were before. It's better with wages lower, to make things more affordable. But forget all that, because that has nothing to do with the haunted house industry. I'm just telling you some of the basics of what I know of what's going on. So as we know, Trump has been trying to get Powell to lower interest rates. And he's refused because I guess he fears inflation will be triggered. I mean, and I think that Trump is looking at it from, long-term debt, short-term debt, getting better interest rates, saves. I think Trump has said it would save the country about $800 billion. But I want you to think about like companies when they can refinance long-term debt, or when the money they free up from interest can go back into the business to grow the business. When you think about the regular person on the street, they can buy a car, they can do a home addition again, they can do a pool, they can buy a new home, which frees up a home to be sold to someone else. And that's a problem too. These houses, people are asking insane amounts of money for these houses, mostly because of COVID. You can literally go on Zillow and see what this house was pre-COVID, what it sold for the last time pre-COVID. And it's like literally 75% more than it was pre-COVID. And houses shouldn't go up that fast in a span of 5 years, but it did. And so there's a big market correcting going on where, people are asking absurd amounts of money for a home. It's not selling. They have to keep dropping the price. So I don't know. I'm not trying to give you a economic lesson because I'm not an expert at it. This is just basics that I understand and know. And if I'm wrong about something, love to hear your comment below. But apparently this is having an impact on the entertainment industry, as a lot of entertainment has taken a hit, okay? Well, because people aren't spending as much money. Now, it also could be because when you think about entertainment in 2025, opposed to say 1918 or 2018, let's give it an example, you have had so many different kinds of entertainment open: game show places, escape rooms, new types of bowling centers that are entertainment centers, all kinds of, like when we talk about Halloween in general, there's like been so many different kinds of attractions spring off of Halloween. We've seen theme parks, like even like the Six Flags has embraced like, oh, let's license something and have that as a marketing advantage. Now, when a Six Flags in say Cleveland, Ohio, which there is no Six Flags in Cleveland, Ohio, but let's just say Cleveland, Ohio, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Kansas City, whatever it is, these smaller, we're not talking about the Los Angeleses of the world, the Chicagos of the world, the New Yorks of the world. We're talking about the smaller markets, bigger cities, but smaller cities, and in the perspective compared to like a Los Angeles. What you see, okay, is that do they really need licensed uh, haunted houses to compete with who? They're not competing with Universal Studios per se because they're in Florida and Los Angeles, now Las Vegas. No, they're competing with local haunts. Okay, that's who they're competing with. Make no mistake about it. Your local theme park is trying to clean your clock. Okay, when they start doing Saw Haunted House and Texas Chainsaw, whatever it is that they licensed. No, they're trying to go after your business. There's no two ways about it. They want a bigger share of the people who are going to spend 25, 35, $40 on a haunted house. They want them to come to Six Flags. That's the bottom line. They're not competing with Universal. They're competing with Universal on a national perception. Okay, but they're not competing for local business by doing some licensed haunted house. They're competing with you. Okay, and probably one of the only reasons certain Six Flags are even in business anymore is because Fright Fest is so popular. They have season passes. People pay $55, $65, whatever it is, to have a pass to go all season, which includes Fright Fest, um, which I think is a mistake, by the way, on the part of Six Flags. I think that they should break their Halloween event off like Universal Studio does, like Tampa Busch Gardens does, I believe like SeaWorld does. Okay. And they should make it a separate ticket where you have to pay to get in. I think that would be better for them, to be honest. But they get a lot of people go to this Fright Fest because they have a pass. Okay. Now, a lot of Six Flags have been charging like $35 ish, 25, whatever it is, to go through the actual mazes. Okay. And we all know they're not that great. They've never have been. They are spending a lot more money on them. They're trying to make them better. But there's only so good you're going to be able to do with the amount of money that they put in compared to like Universal. When you take these things down, you put them back up again, and you do this process over and over and over and over again. Um, and so it is what it is. But make no mistake about it, your local theme park is trying to take your lunch. Um, and you're trying to compete with them as well. So it's just the way that the economy works, right? It's a free market. So, but at the end of the day, you have to compete with these people. You have to compete with fall festivals or somebody who might just open a zombie paintball situation or a boo at the zoo or these pop-up Halloween bars or whatever. I mean, there's so many different things going on now for Halloween. It's like absurd where people have, gotten into the holiday. And then who else you kind of compete with as well is the home haunters, okay? They've really gone over the top with some of these haunted houses, and some people like in the community think, I can go to this thing that my neighbor's putting on for free. Okay. And I also think that haunted house ticket prices have gotten really high. And I understand they've gotten really high because costs have gone way up as well. When you consider the cost of labor and insurance has skyrocketed, rents have skyrocketed. I mean, everything has skyrocketed. So, but we might be pricing ourselves out a little bit because when you start getting into the realm of $35, $45, okay, you have to think about like your local theme park, they're selling these season passes for what? $60, $70, whatever it is. Okay, you're really starting to compete on that level. So you better be offering something super special, if you get what I'm saying. So, but anyway, getting back to Transworld, I do think that sales overall for vendors are down. I think the previous Halloween, 2024, was down for most people. I do think a lot of people did less attendance, but because they raised the price, they were at or above or slightly below or right at the line of being in par with the year before. But I think attendances are going down and prices have been going up. I think that's probably the case with a lot of things, not just haunted houses. And basically, you know what you're seeing in Major League Baseball, for example, these new stadiums they want to build. Instead of building a stadium that holds 40,000, 45,000 people, they're trying to build one that hold 30,000, 32,000. The new stadium in Las Vegas is going to hold 32,000. The St. Louis Cardinals want to do a big renovation to their stadium, and I believe what they're probably going to try to do is they're going to try to get where they take out lots of seating and build more premium spaces, like where you can have more of an experience. The Kansas City Royals, same thing. They're in a stadium that holds 40 plus, and their new stadium they want to build, I think, is around 30. And I think it's going to have a lot of premium spaces, where you're sitting in like reclining chairs and private bars and spaces to have experiences. Okay. You know, when the mass majority of baseball teams that start the season have virtually no chance of winning the World Series, you've got to market to the younger generation about creating experiences. The St. Louis Cardinals attendance is way, way, way down this year. It's like down drastically. But before the season started, their marketing campaign was geared towards young people about having experiences, okay? That you guys can come as friends and you guys can just like hang out and take photos and reels of your experiences and have a great time. So if you look at the tea leaves, and I keep talking about the Cardinals because I'm in St. Louis, but St. Louis Cardinals didn't invent this. A lot of the baseball teams took this approach when they know they don't have a lot of superstars on their team to market around. They market around having experiences. And I literally did a whole video about uh, that your haunted houses need to not be so much about getting scared, but by creating experiences, literally letting the guests know that if they come to your attraction, they're going to have an experience like they can't have anywhere else. And that's what a lot of bad baseball teams are marketing. You're going to have an experience here that you can't have anywhere else in town. And I think that's where the haunted house industry should be going. I think that when people go to Transworld next year, they should be more focused on like how do we create more experiences at our attraction than like, oh, I need more monsters, I need more dead bodies, I need more animations. I think it should be based on creating more experiences. And if I was a vendor, that's what I would be trying to bring to the 2026 Transworld show. And again, talking about Transworld, I mean, look, I've said this for years, and I'm just going to say it. I'm going to get in trouble. But like to me, the seminar series at Transworld has not been that good. Okay. Um, it's not in the right direction. And I hate to say this because, Transworld put uh, one specific person kind of in charge of it. And then like he does 5 seminars. Everybody that works at his place does seminars. And then I hate to say this too, because they have really literally flooded the seminar series with uh, more home hauntery, uh, you know, people that literally focus on prop building and how to type of speakers. And I don't think that if you're an industry trade show, meaning you are uh, an industry, like, that you should be focused so much on the how to type of speakers and then literally having these same people like do 4 or 5 seminars. Okay. It's not good. I've always felt that the seminars at Transworld should be more focused on the haunted house industry, okay, and what their needs are, not how many tickets can we sell if we do a how to, because there's so many home haunters coming to the show now. That's more of to me, hey, that makes good business sense. But maybe they should do home haunter seminars, and maybe they should rent more space and focus on home haunters and push them over here. And the seminars for the haunted house industry need to be focused on what the haunted house industry needs the most. And we don't need to learn how to make a chainsaw out of bubble gum, fishing string, and plastic tubs, as an example. We don't need the same person doing 5 seminars. Okay. Um, you need professional approach, something that is well thought out, that is going to help the haunted house industry grow their business. And I say this to vendors: if you want to sell more products, then the haunt owners need to be able to grow their business. The mass majority of haunted houses out there do less than 5,000 people. If a haunted house could go from 5,000 to 7,300, that is literally a massive increase in attendance. And what are those people going to do? They're going to get the bug to grow their business, and they're going to buy more props. If I was in the vendor community and I was really concerned about selling more products in 2026, if the haunt industry um, goes down in 2025, which I think that's what's going to happen, then I would be focused on, hey, let's help the people who need the most help grow their business. One of the biggest problems in the haunted house industry, in my opinion, is that the majority of the people in the business don't understand that it is a business. They think it's a passion. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. When I did the Darkness Haunt Tour a few years ago, I was talking about, all the ways that we're trying to raise revenue and increase business and so on and so forth. And some guy raised his hand and he said, hey, Larry, I just want to tell you, I've always been a fan of you and your haunt, and you're kind of like a haunt hero to me. And he says all this stuff. And then he says, but I have to tell you, I'm very disappointed because all I hear you do is talk about money and business and this and that and the other. Where's your passion for Halloween? Do you no longer have a passion for Halloween? And I answered the guy by saying, because this was towards the end of the seminar thing that I do for the behind the scenes tour. And I said to the guy, I said, in about 10 minutes, we're going to start walking through the haunted house. When you go through the Darkness Haunted House, tell me that it's not Willy Wonka's chocolate factory of Halloween. Okay. Tell me there's no passion inside the haunted house. I mean, walking around my house here, you see Halloween comforters and quilts and everything else. Of course, I love Halloween. But the way you grow your business is by getting more customers, creating more revenue. The way that you keep your full-time employees is you have to be able to pay them, okay, to pay for workers' comp. One of the things I think a lot of haunted house owners forget, and vendors as well, is that it's not only about how much am I making in covering all my expenses to build and make and sell a prop. But you also have to remember that you have expenses. You personally, might have a car payment, a house payment. You might have kids. You got to put food on the table. You have to pay the rent. Okay, you have to pay the utilities. So all of these things have to factor into you making money with your attraction. And so, and I'm gonna say something, and hopefully this becomes a famous quote. Okay, you got into the haunted house business because of your passion. Okay. And that is why you are in the business. Okay. But you have to remember it is a business. Okay. You got into it for passion, but you have to remember it's a business. Okay. There's the quote. And I think too often that most haunted house owners don't realize it is a business, because if they did understand that it was a business, they wouldn't be so focused, okay, on like working at the haunt every single day. They would be more focused on social media. They'd be focused on growing their platforms. They'd be more focused on the PR. They would be more focused on all of these things, and they would realize, my passion is building scenes and this and that and the other, but I need to focus on growing the business. And I grow the business by separating myself. I remember listening to Kurt Smith one time from Tears for Fears talk about the band Tears for Fears, because the early stuff, most of it was written by the other band member, Roland Orzabal. Now when they do albums, they're almost like equally written by the two of them. And he said, my job really in the early days was promoting the band. Okay, trying to line up our concerts, handling the promotions, doing most of the interviews, and trying to grow the business, while Roland focused on writing songs and producing music. Okay, it's like you have to remember that even if it's a band, the only way you're going to grow the band is if you're doing a lot of media and doing a lot of promotion and getting out there and putting your music out in front of as many people as possible. You can't be like curled up in uh, like a recording studio writing songs for 9 months and not doing any promotion for the band unless you're the Beatles and you're already super successful and it sells itself. But when you're trying to get going and get off the ground, somebody has got to do a lot of the promotion. That's just the way it is. And I think a lot of people in the haunt industry aren't getting that message. Okay. And again, if I was Transworld, I would be creating, I wouldn't be doing costume balls. That's just me. When I go to other industry trade shows that I go to for blacklight attractions, they're doing, business to business, meet and greets, different events, ballroom events where only people who are owners and operators and they have to buy a ticket and they can mingle with other people and there might be like a speaker or two or a presentation or something, but it's really focused on people getting together and talking shop. Okay. And I think that's needed at Transworld. I think more of those kind of events should happen rather than a costume ball, which doesn't benefit your business one bit. I think that too many people in this industry have turned Transworld into like, oh, we're going to go and we're going to have a great time, rather than spend your time trying to learn from other haunters. Um, and so I just think there's a difference in the haunted house industry than there is in the bowling industry, the family fun center industry, or the amusement park industry. Because, I think even like baseball, there's no doubt that baseball has like conventions and stuff like that where they're all getting together and they're trading information. They're getting together and they're trading information, whether it's about marketing, food options, or whatever. And they're trying to learn from each other because at the end of the day, they want that industry to be successful. So they're trading information because the Cardinals, for example, don't necessarily compete with the Minnesota Twins. Why wouldn't they share information? Here's what we did. Here's what we did. Here's what really sold for us. Here's how we were able to create more ancillary income. I don't think that kind of stuff is going on in the haunt industry because when you think about like the biggest group, like say haunters hang out, and I'm not against haunters hang out. I've said this 100 times, but that's more of a home haunter. It's more for actors. It's more for uh, people that are making stuff out of their basement. Okay. It's more for people who just like Halloween in general. It's not the place to go for haunted house owner operators to learn about what they should or shouldn't be doing. We used to have that. It was called the Hauntworld Fright Forum, physically on Hauntworld itself, where it was more focused on that kind of thing. And whenever you're talking about Facebook and stuff, like you post it and it could be shared out of the group. And, people just in the haunt industry don't have a spot right now where they're going and they're talking shop, where they're having a fear of, say, being ridiculed. And let me give you a prime example. You look at this whole situation going on with Field of Screams. What a joke, okay? Because a lot of the stuff that is being complained about happens at every business across the country. And I'm not saying that something isn't legit or it's a joke, okay? What I'm saying is, people having affairs, for example, that happens at every business. I mean, who didn't see this new Coldplay thing, where they try to dive out of the screen because both of them were having an affair, right? So this is nothing new. It's not new to the haunt industry. And by the way, people having parties. I think there was a claim that there's people having alcohol parties, but they're not having it at Field of Screams, right? What's the difference? Like we've seen 1,000 movies where parents go out of town and high school kids somehow get alcohol. I mean, who has never seen the movie Superbad, for example, right? And there's these giant house parties. Look, this stuff goes on. I mean, it's not the business's fault. And by the way, there's always going to be drama at any and all businesses. That's just the way it is. Now, that's not to dismiss anything because don't work there. I don't know what is going on there, but I do know that in general, the majority of the complaints are pretty common for every business. But then you get this situation where, somebody wants to make an accusation, and then there's this giant pylon, and there's a pylon without even the people that are complaining that have any understanding of inner workings, like if this is even true or not true. Just somebody said it, so pile on. I mean, it's ridiculous, okay? Especially if it's not completely true. But who knows? But that's the problem for the haunted house industry. And I'll give you an example. You don't have some group where people can start talking about, hey, should we replace actors? How could we replace actors? Well, if you did that in Haunters Hangout, what would be the reaction? It would be extremely negative. And by the way, getting back to Field of Screams, do I think they should pay their actors? 100% I do. But you weren't taken advantage of because you knew going in that they didn't pay their actors. You still work there. You can't complain about that after the fact. That's ridiculous. Just don't work there. Okay? Don't volunteer your time. If the priority for you is to get paid, then go work at another haunted house. It's that simple. Do I agree that they should pay their actors? Of course. But why do people keep volunteering? And it's not because the place is like this infested nightmare of drama, because people are working there and volunteering their time there because obviously they have a great time there. They love the experience. So I would say that probably most of the people are enjoying their experience at Field of Screams. That's why people keep volunteering. At least that's what I would think by using common sense. That doesn't mean they don't have problems. That doesn't mean they shouldn't pay their actors. When a haunt is that successful, I do think they should pay their actors. But this is getting way off the topic. But let's be honest, over 90% of all haunted houses are volunteer. This is nothing new. There's a lot of for-profit haunts that are volunteer, and people do it because they have a passion for it and they want to do it. And by the way, a lot of people like the fact that, hey, I love doing this. This is one of my favorite things to do, but I only want to do it when I'm available. Okay. And so if that works for the haunt, that works for the people because they get to go their, scare on when they're free, when they're available. I think there's downsides to it too. I think that's one of the reasons why, honestly, Field of Screams allowed 15-year-olds to volunteer because they don't have enough volunteers to fill that massive place. I don't think they should have 15-year-olds working there. Okay, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with a lot of things that happen. Period. Now I'm not talking about just the haunt industry. I'm talking about in general. Okay, look, a lot of people don't like the stuff that Trump does. They protest, they get upset, they post on Facebook endlessly, telling you all about it every single day. That's why I can't even get on Facebook. It's like all people do is complain. And that's the problem, where getting back, that haunt owners need that ability to have a safe space, so to speak, a safe space where they can talk, where they're not going to be, ridiculed by the majority. Because what is the majority in the Halloween industry? It's people who actually don't risk their own money to run a business, because it is not easy. It is an easy way to lose a lot of money. And I don't think that most haunted houses, there's no Elon Musks, okay, in the haunted house industry. Let me just put it that way. I've always described haunted houses as like a tornado. You get caught in the tornado. And by the way, you know what the tornado is? Your passion. You get sucked into it. And what is it? The wind goes around and around and around. And so let's just say this point of the tornado is running the season. And then this point is the season being over. And then you got to go all the way back. And so whatever money you make, and by the way, again, you have to pay your own bills and everything. And you get sucked into this tornado and it whips you back around. And then by the time you get back to opening again, you're broke. And so I understand why a lot of haunts are volunteer. I really do. But what I think has to happen is vendors, okay? Haunted house owner operators need to have, more commitment to growing this business, because we are under siege. Theme parks have really taken this model of Universal Studios and they're really trying to run with it and create like a Horror Nights in every market in America. What do? What should we do? How can we do better on marketing? Okay. How can we be more cost efficient on insurance? Could we get together and have like all the haunts are buying insurance together? Is that even a possibility to save money? Um, could what's actually working and not working on the digital marketing side? We need to have these discussions. And when you do these seminars, 60 scares in 60 minutes, I mean, that's so ridiculous. I keep beating on that seminar. It's the stupidest, dumbest, worst topic I've ever heard in my entire life for a seminar. That's not going to benefit a single person. It's not going to help you grow your business by one customer. And when you're in an environment where people are spending less money and you're focused on 60 scares in 60 minutes, like, I mean, like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? And there's a costume ball. Like, what are we doing? We're not focusing on growing the business, and we're not going to buy more products. And I can tell you this right now, when you look at Six Flags dropping $100 million on spending on rides, this is affecting a lot of businesses, okay? And they won't be the only ones, okay? And so when you look at the haunted house industry, if we have a bad season in 2026, some of the people that were the most affected might spend a whole lot less. So how do you make it up? You make it up in volume. You make it up in volume by helping the people that are in the bottom or in the middle grow, okay? And let them spend the money. That's what we should be focusing on as an industry, not costume balls, not 60 scares in 60 minutes, okay? That's not what we should be focusing on. Okay, we need to focus on growing the business, the industry as a whole. We need to look out for the independent haunt owners and operators, okay, because they are the bread and butter for the vendors. Because if it all went to nothing but theme parks, uh, I don't know that you would have a big giant trade show. I don't know that if you would have as many vendors as you have today. So we really need to have that environment, okay? And it's not Haunters Hangout. Sorry, it's not. You can't have a discussion. Hey, how much should we pay our actors? Ask that question on Haunters Hangout and see what the responses are, okay? You can't have that conversation. You can't make, like, if you were to ask, like, the actors how much they should get paid, they're not paid anywhere close to being enough. Now, you know what? Would I disagree that they're not paid? Absolutely, I would. But when a haunted house has to have 100 or 200 people to operate their attraction, no, they can't be paying $20, $25, $30 an hour. They can't do it, okay? That's where you get into this Field of Screams thing, where they have been able to grow the business exponentially. They've been able to buy all the homes around it. They've been able to expand the business because they don't pay their actors. So the business grew faster than it probably should have or could have because they don't pay the actors. But the actors clearly like being there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be volunteering. It's not for me to decide whether a person volunteers their time to help a business. That's not uncommon. Okay. And I'm not saying it's going to be the norm going forward. In fact, if you ask me, I would bet that Field of Screams probably, when it's all said and done, are going to start paying their actors. But that has nothing to do with the topic of will the haunted house season be down in 2025? I think it's going to be a yes. It's going to be down. I think some haunts have raised their price, and hopefully they create other ways to keep the revenue the same, even with the attendance being lower. I think the only way you can get higher attendance is lower the price. It's that simple. So we're doing slasher weekends where it's $19.99. Last year we sold it out. The price has a lot to do with it. If you lower the price, say for we're at $35 and you lowered it down to $25, your attendance probably going to go up. But does that mean you're going to make more money or the same money? It's probably going to be the same because you're going to get less people, higher price, less headaches. Okay. So that's something you have to decide if overall attendance is the priority or if a higher price, lower attendance. But I do think that in 2025 you're going to get less attendance. I think you're going to have potentially less revenue as well. I think that's going to affect people spending in 2026. Now, I can tell you from my standpoint, to wrap up this video, I plan on spending less money on my haunted houses in 2026, specifically the darkness. Most of the stuff that I want for the darkness is going to be very limited. Um, I do plan on doing a haunt tour in 2026 because I did a lot of stuff to the darkness after Transworld 2025. And because I couldn't get all that stuff done that I wanted to get done, I couldn't even get the alien up and running for Transworld 2025. So it's up and running now. I didn't have the secret bar done. I didn't have the Frankenstein, the big Frankenstein head. I mean, I didn't have it in the haunt because I took it to Transworld and a lot of people filmed it. So of course it wasn't in there. So we did a lot of work to the darkness after the fact, literally for about almost 2 months after Transworld. And so, yeah, we think that the darkness is really cool to do another haunt tour. Plus, we're going to be adding a few things, but we're not going to go hog wild crazy. I've spent enough, and I'm not going to spend any money on the darkness other than a couple little things and a few odd and end changes. I'm going to focus on selling mini golfs and focusing there, not spending all of the money on doing stuff that the darkness doesn't need. Now, Creepy World, on the other hand, we might build one new haunt for Creepy World. We might do a lot of changes to Creepy World because we haven't done any this year. And on top of that, we have a lot of props that are old and broken up. So we might buy a lot of props for Creepy World, but hardly any for the darkness. And then I would say in 2027, we probably wouldn't buy anything for either place. And so I think this is what's going to be happening in the haunt industry because a lot of haunts bought a lot of stuff during COVID, but now you're starting to see fewer people coming. You're starting to see fewer people spending big money like they did during COVID. I think things are going to slow down on the vendor side as well. And I'm telling you, vendors, the way you're going to make it up is by literally the mass majority of haunts need to see their business go up. The ones that can go up easily are those attractions. And so we really need to focus the education at Transworld on bringing up the rear. Okay. We also need to focus on the bigger haunts too, of like figuring out how do they compete in this new environment with these mini Universal Horror Nights, like in every market. So there's my video today. I do think I covered a lot of topics. I'd love to hear your comments below, but I will tell you, honestly, I think that the attendance is going to be down in 2025. That's what I think. I think that maybe you should consider, not going crazy, spending a lot of money on marketing. I think maybe you need to try to figure out like where you don't need staffing. Because, at the end of the day, like I said, you're in this tornado and you got to be able to make it back around without getting flung out of the tornado. Because, that's what happens in a tornado, too. Some things that are in the tornado get flung out. And when they get flung out, they get flung out hundreds of feet. And then whatever that was, when it hits the ground, it's destroyed. So you don't want to be that, okay? You want to be able to keep in the tornado and keep doing this. So you've got to remember that this was a passion, but is also a business. So thanks for watching the video. I do think it's going to be a slower Halloween season, 2025. And I think that Transworld spending in 2026 will be lower as well. Now, I could be wrong. And I hope I'm wrong, okay? I run a haunted house. And by the way, I also like buying cool stuff. So I do think it's going to be slower in 2026. And by the way, it's not going to be Transworld's fault. This is the environment that you're in. Things have changed. Things have changed drastically. The only thing I would blame Transworld for is they really have got to get these seminars and these events that they produce have really, I mean, I don't care that they have a costume ball, but market that to the people who want a costume ball. And simultaneous to that, they should be having mixers for people who own and operate attractions. That's all I'm saying. They need to do a better job with the seminars. I do think that they need to, whoever has been doing the seminars, they need to get rid of that person. 100%. They're doing a terrible job. They need to get somebody who actually understands what the common haunted house, the majority of haunted houses need, and then create the FOMO around that seminar series. Like, hey, if you don't come, your competitors will, and you'll lose out. Fear of missing out. That's where the seminars need to be. And that's what will drive people into seminars, focused more on making the business grow. Does that make sense? Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you very soon. And have a great day. And I hope that your Halloween is as best as it possibly can be. But the tea leaves are kind of out there right now that it's not going to be the greatest season ever. But we'll see. And we'll see what happens. Until then, happy Halloween, happy hauntings, and we'll see you very soon.